So what was with the unboxing video? Well, I made a switch, and to explain, I have to give you a little context. I started shooting photography in the film days, and I did so on a Canon Rebel that my dad gave me. And I loved photography. I loved from the very beginning. And I was obsessed with two things: getting great photos and doing so in a very small body. So I bought a lot of different cameras over the years to try to accomplish that. Everything from Nikons, Canons, Sonys. And I really fell in love with mirrorless photography with the Sony NEX3. This was the first time that I bought a camera, albeit today an APS-C camera that was probably a little early in the time frame, that I loved how the photos came out of. And I loved that camera until one day it slid off my car and it broke. So I moved on and tried a few different fixed lens, smaller body cameras, and honestly was always a bit dissatisfied. So one day I bought the Sony a7 II as our middle child was being born, and I took some great photos with that camera. I liked the camera itself, but it never felt like a photographer's camera. It felt like a cool piece of technology that could take some great images, but it just wasn't something that I was in love with. So along came Canon's entry into the mirrorless story with the Canon EOS R. Now, this was a camera that was pretty widely hated for a lot of reasons, but I liked it. I bought it. I jumped in the Canon system. I love their color science. I like the feel of the camera, and it lacked a lot of the bells and whistles and the autofocusing system of Sony's, but I still enjoyed that camera a lot. Never was a real Nikon guy. The one that I tried was not so great. So I hemmed and hawed about what I should do with cameras, and then Canon came out with the EOS R5 in 2020. I added this to my kit, sold the EOS R, and I was really happy to be in this system. I know a lot of people complain on YouTube about overheating, but the truth is I didn't shoot a lot of 8K video, and it wasn't a problem I was ever going to experience with the camera. And for photography reasons, it produced some really gorgeous image over the couple of years that I had it. But I found myself lately being a bit confused on what camera system to use. I've tried Fuji, I've shot a lot on Leicas on a Q2, and I kept leaving the Canon behind. And so I sat down a few months ago and budgeted out and thought about what I could trade my cameras for. And if I did that, what system would I want to end up in? And much to my friend Drew's probable joy, and Jack's as well, Sony just really had the answers to the things I was looking at. I want to get into video, and with the ZV-1E, which I'm shooting this video on, I could have a great camera for a podcast setup, for shooting 4K video anywhere I went, for shooting slow motion video that would take all of the E-mount lenses, which are fantastic in size and honestly quite inexpensive. But then what do I do for photography? The Q2 is fantastic for that reason, but carrying two bodies and having one of them be fixed frame and one of them not do photos didn't feel like the right choice. And that's where this comes in. So the Sony a7 R5 serves two major purposes in the story for me. From a camera standpoint, it is one of the best photography cameras on the market. It has that new tilty flippy, really cool screen. It's great for any type of photography, whether that's portrait photography, probably not street photography, but I'm not super into that, astrophotography, or landscape photography. The other advantage to this one is because it being E-mount, it means that the lens that I'm using on this ZV can be moved over to that full frame Sony whenever I want to record video there. And while the ZV can basically shoot in the dark because it uses the A7S III sensor, that other Sony, so the R, in daylight and regular work, it's going to be just fine for what I do. I shoot mostly in S-Cinetone. I'm shooting in a way in 4K that is not necessary for me to always have the absolute peak image quality. And this one and this camera are basically interchangeable. In fact, if you look at the last episode of our podcast, we changed cameras mid-podcast and I couldn't see the difference. I looked through that footage for over an hour. So this particular camera is carrying on it the G Master 1.4 35mm lens, and I'm using that because here, paired up with one of Polar Pro's ND filters, I get just a great everyday focal length for photography. I get great stunning B-roll when I want to use it that way, as you saw in some of the earlier shots like the cigar video, and it gives me something to counter the 20mm 1.8 that you're looking at right now that I'm going to use for vlogging and video. So as I get ready to go on this big trip, these two devices together are what's going to come with me to create the stories that I want to tell. One primarily for photography with a little bit of video capability, one primarily for video with some photography capability, and hopefully two of them working in Congress to create something that I'm really proud of. Now, I got to be honest with you, switching camera systems is super expensive. And luckily for me, the Canon and the lenses held their value in an incredible way. And so I got to do this for a very little to no investment. But that's not something everyone can do, and I do not suggest it. In fact, I do have another camera system to sell to make this all work out the way that I want, but I am really excited that all my filters share now the same filter thread size, that the bodies share the same lenses, and that I have what is considered top of the line in autofocus and in video. And as that's the medium that I'm trying to play in the most, I think it's gonna really serve me well in making the content that I wanna make on this channel and for my family, which I'm really excited about.